Aaron Hernandez's shocking descent from football hero to convicted killer left the world stunned, but few knew just how deep the story went.
I know he expressed, how beat up his body was and the effects the game had on him, but in terms of identifying CTE, I know there's things in his life that, he struggled with understanding.
From touchdowns to trials, a murder conviction, and a tragic end in prison. What drove him from fame to infamy? The truth behind his double life is darker and more haunting than anyone imagined. The rise and the mask. In the annals of professional sports history, few stories are as simultaneously captivating and heartbreaking as that of Aaron Joseph Hernandez. Born on November 6, 1989 in Bristol, Connecticut, this young man would ascend to the pinnacle of athletic achievement, only to plummet into an abyss of violence, legal troubles, and ultimately, a tragic end that would leave the sports world forever changed. Aaron Hernandez was a standout athlete from Bristol, Connecticut, who played college football at the University of Florida alongside quarterback Tim Tebow under coach Urban Meyer. But his journey to stardom was paved with warning signs that, in retrospect, painted a portrait of a deeply troubled young man struggling with forces far beyond his control. His father, Dennis Hernandez, a former high school football star of Puerto Rican descent, was reportedly physically abusive, imposing high expectations for athletic success on Aaron and his older brother Jonathan. The household was a pressure cooker of expectations, where failure was met not with understanding, but with violence that would leave lasting scars on young Aaron's psyche.
Would he beat your brother and you?
Oh, I don't think beat is really even the word that can be expressed. When you literally have to blow on your brother's wounds because of the creases of a belt or handprint in your body and the burning sensation it has, and have a rule that in your household you can get beat but you stay away from the face so other people can't notice. It really has an effect on the way you approach situations in terms of communicating with others, because your safety net is in question because you don't feel safe.
But the trauma didn't end with physical abuse. Reports also indicate that Aaron was sexually molested by an older boy during childhood, a trauma that, combined with his father's homophobic attitudes, contributed to his struggles with his sexuality. The first devastating blow to Aaron's already fragile emotional foundation came in 2006, when he was just 16 years old. His father's death due to complications from routine hernia surgery was a pivotal moment that led Hernandez to turn to drugs and struggle with emotional stability. The loss of his father, despite the abuse, removed what Aaron perceived as his anchor, leaving him adrift in a sea of pain and confusion. Despite these personal struggles, Aaron's athletic prowess was undeniable. He excelled in football at Bristol Central High School, earning the Connecticut Gatorade Football Player of the Year award in 2007. His high school statistics were nothing short of phenomenal: 67 receptions for 1,807 yards and 24 touchdowns on offense, alongside 72 tackles, 12 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, and 4 blocked kicks on defense. These weren't just impressive numbers. They were record-breaking achievements that painted him as a once-in-a-generation talent. College was where the first serious red flags emerged, like cracks in a seemingly perfect facade. As a freshman at Florida, he was involved in a bar fight and a shooting, though no charges were filed for the latter. These incidents weren't just youthful indiscretions. They were harbingers of a pattern of violence that would only escalate with time. A former Florida Gators teammate described Hernandez as having really angry outbursts a lot over insignificant things, noting that when he started, he couldn't stop. The most telling incident occurred in April 2007, when 17-year-old Aaron got into an altercation at the Swamp restaurant in Gainesville. He punched a waiter, Timothy Cook, rupturing his eardrum over a dispute about a $12 bar tab. This wasn't just a moment of poor judgment. It was a glimpse into a violent streak that would define his future. Even more troubling was a shooting incident in September 2007, where 2 men, Corey Smith and Justin Glass, were shot while waiting at a traffic light after leaving a nightclub. Hernandez was questioned but never charged, yet the description of the shooter as a Hawaiian or Hispanic male, approximately 230 pounds with tattoos, matched Aaron's physical characteristics with eerie accuracy. Throughout his college career, Aaron's substance abuse issues became increasingly apparent. Hernandez was suspended for 1 game at the University of Florida after failing a marijuana test, and his chronic drug use became such a problem that Coach Meyer considered removing him from the team for chronic marijuana use and poor grades. It was only through the intervention of teammate Tim Tebow that Aaron remained on the roster, a detail that would later take on tragic significance. The NFL beckoned, and despite concerns about his character, Aaron's talent was simply too extraordinary to ignore. The New England Patriots selected him in the 4th round of the 2010 NFL Draft, pairing him with Rob Gronkowski to form what would become one of the most formidable tight end duos in league history. At age 20, he was the youngest player in the NFL during the 2010 season.
Because then you always dream of it, but you never really think it's gonna come, and then when it happens, and you know there's a good chance you're set for life as long as you handle it the right way. It's an honor, and it seemed so surreal. Like, is it really true? Had a lot more to give back, and all I could do was play my heart out for them, make the right decisions, and live like a Patriot.
The irony of those words, make the right decisions and live like a Patriot, would become painfully apparent in the years that followed. For on the surface, Aaron Hernandez appeared to be living the American dream. Hernandez set a team rookie record for tight ends with 45 catches in 2010 and contributed to the Patriots' 14-2 record. In 2011, he and Gronkowski combined for 24 touchdowns and 2,237 receiving yards, helping the team reach Super Bowl XSLVS, though they would ultimately lose to the New York Giants. The pinnacle of his professional success came in August 2012 when Hernandez signed a 5-year, $40 million contract extension with a $12.5 million signing bonus, the largest ever for a tight end at the time. To the outside world, this was validation of his extraordinary talent and his apparent transformation from a troubled college student into a mature professional athlete. But beneath this glossy exterior, a far more sinister reality was taking shape.
I don't know, but I know one thing I know is it definitely changed my life. I'm gonna look at things differently, and I may be the young and wild, but I'm not. I'm engaged now, and I have a baby, so. And it's just gonna make me think of life a lot differently and doing things the right way. Because now another one's looking up to me. I can't just be young and reckless Aaron no more. So I just I'm gonna try to do the right things, become a good father, and be raised like I was raised.
He was engaged to Shayana Jenkins, and they had welcomed their daughter Avielle in November 2012. By all outward appearances, Aaron Hernandez had everything a young man could want: fame, fortune, a loving family, and a promising future. But the demons that had been planted in his childhood were growing stronger, fed by years of unaddressed trauma, substance abuse, and a dangerous lifestyle that existed parallel to his football career.
I'm feeling pretty good, and I'm happy. You see him smiling.
Talk about the experience. Being a father for the first time, you spoke when you got the contract about your life changing. Is this another one of those?
Definitely a life changer. Especially every time I come to the stadium, can't wait to go see her. And she's a cutie, and can't wait to go back and basically look at myself.
The tragic irony is that Aaron seemed to genuinely understand what he needed to do to create a better life for himself and his family. But understanding what needed to be done and having the emotional and psychological tools to do it are two entirely different things. And Aaron Hernandez, for all his athletic gifts and apparent self-awareness, was carrying baggage that would prove too heavy for him to bear. The double life and descent into darkness. While Aaron Hernandez was dazzling fans on Sunday afternoons with his athletic prowess, he was simultaneously living a shadow life that would have seemed impossible to those who only knew him as a celebrated NFL star. This wasn't simply a case of an athlete making poor choices. This was the systematic construction of a parallel existence where violence, drugs, and criminal behavior coexisted with million-dollar contracts and primetime television appearances. The duality of Aaron's existence was so complete, so carefully compartmentalized, that even those closest to him struggled to reconcile the loving father and teammate they knew with the cold-blooded killer he would ultimately become. Hernandez's personal life was increasingly chaotic. He smoked large quantities of marijuana, used cocaine, and was reportedly a heavy user of phencyclidine, PCP, or angel dust, which can cause paranoia and violent outbursts. This wasn't recreational drug use. This was a systematic assault on his already fragmented psyche, with substances that are known to exacerbate paranoia, aggression, and impulsive decision-making. Perhaps even more troubling was Aaron's association with dangerous individuals from his hometown of Bristol, Connecticut. He associated with questionable figures from his hometown, including Alexander Bradley, a friend and alleged marijuana supplier. These weren't casual acquaintances or childhood friends who had simply grown apart. These were active participants in criminal enterprises who saw Aaron's wealth and status as both an opportunity and a shield for their illegal activities. The Patriots organization, for their part, seemed either oblivious to or willfully ignorant of the growing storm brewing around their star player. Patriots teammate Dane Fletcher described being wary of Hernandez's association with ex-convict friends from Bristol, Connecticut, stating, "I knew they were trouble. Everybody kind of did." If everybody kind of did know about Aaron's dangerous associations, it raises profound questions about the culture within the organization and the league's broader responsibility for monitoring player behavior. The locker room atmosphere around Aaron was becoming increasingly toxic and uncomfortable for his teammates. Odin Lloyd provided detailed accounts of Hernandez's behavior, describing extreme mood swings where he'd be the most hyper-masculine, aggressive individual in the room one moment and the most sensitive person in the room, talking about cuddling with his mother the next. These weren't just personality quirks. They were manifestations of a deeply fractured psyche, struggling to maintain coherence under enormous pressure. Even more disturbing were reports of Aaron's inappropriate sexual behavior in the locker room. Teammate Wes Welker warned Odin Lloyd about Hernandez's bizarre locker room behavior. "He's gonna have his genitalia out in front of you while you're sitting on your stool. He's gonna talk about gay sex. Just do your best to ignore it, even walk away." This behavior wasn't just inappropriate, it was a manifestation of Aaron's internal struggle with his sexuality in an environment that was notoriously unwelcoming to LGBTQ+ individuals. The first major crack in Aaron's carefully constructed facade came in July 2012, though it wouldn't be publicly revealed for nearly 2 years. Daniel De Abreu and Safiro Furtado were killed in a drive-by shooting outside the Cure Lounge in Boston South End. Witnesses reported that Hernandez, who was at the nightclub, became angry after De Abreu accidentally spilled a drink on him. This wasn't a crime of passion or a moment of poor judgment. According to prosecutors, Hernandez pulled up beside the victim's car, said, "What's up now?" in asteriskers, and fired 5 shots. The cold-blooded nature of this act, allegedly triggered by something as trivial as a spilled drink, provided a chilling glimpse into the mind of a man for whom human life had lost all value.
He leaned across me and extended his body out the window with the firearm in his hand. Before he fired the gun, he was like, "What's up now?" And he started firing shots. He said to me, "Did I see that?" And I said no. He said, "I hit one in the head and one in the chest."
The psychological toll of maintaining this double life was beginning to manifest in increasingly erratic behavior. Hernandez exhibited signs of emotional volatility and poor impulse control. Teammates described him as prone to angry outbursts over trivial matters, with mood swings ranging from hypermasculine to emotionally vulnerable. These weren't just bad days or moments of stress, they were symptoms of a man whose grip on reality was becoming increasingly tenuous. The violence continued to escalate. In February 2013, Alexander Bradley, a friend and alleged drug supplier, was shot in the forehead and left for dead in an industrial park near Riviera Beach, Florida, after partying with Hernandez at a Miami strip club. Bradley survived, losing his right eye, and would later become a key witness against Aaron. The fact that Aaron allegedly attempted to murder someone who had been considered a close friend demonstrated a level of paranoia and callousness that suggested his mental state was deteriorating rapidly. Throughout this period of escalating violence, Aaron continued to perform at an elite level on the football field, a testament to his extraordinary ability to compartmentalize his life. But the strain was beginning to show in other ways. In prison, he complained of migraines, memory issues, and physical soreness, likening himself to a grandpa. These weren't just the normal aches and pains of a professional athlete. They were early symptoms of what would later be diagnosed as severe chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE. The final act of this tragic drama began to unfold in June 2013, centering around a young man named Odin Lloyd, who had the misfortune of becoming entangled in Aaron's web of paranoia and violence. Odin Lloyd was a semi-professional football player dating the sister of Hernandez's fiancée, Shayana Jenkins. Lloyd was, by all accounts, a hard-working young man with dreams of his own, working as a landscaper while pursuing his athletic ambitions. His only crime was being in the wrong place at the wrong time and knowing too much about Aaron's secret life. The events leading up to Lloyd's murder read like a thriller novel, except the consequences were all too real. On June 17, 2013, Odin Lloyd's body was found in an industrial park in North Attleboro, Massachusetts, near Hernandez's home. Lloyd was shot multiple times, with 2 bullets directly to the chest. The location was significant, less than a mile from Aaron's mansion, as if he couldn't be bothered to travel far to dispose of human life. The evidence against Aaron was overwhelming and painted a picture of premeditated murder. Surveillance footage, cell phone records, and DNA evidence, including a marijuana joint with Hernandez's and Lloyd's DNA, linked Hernandez to the crime. The prosecution's case was built on a foundation of digital breadcrumbs and physical evidence that Aaron seemed either incapable of concealing or simply didn't care about hiding. hiding. The motive for Lloyd's murder remains one of the most disturbing aspects of this case. Prosecutors suggested Hernandez was angry at Lloyd for talking to certain people at a nightclub 2 nights prior, possibly related to the 2012 homicides. The idea that a human life could be snuffed out over something as trivial as a conversation at a nightclub speaks to a level of paranoia and callousness that defies comprehension. But there may have been an even more sinister motive lurking beneath the surface. Some have speculated that Lloyd's knowledge of Hernandez's rumored sexuality may have played a role, though this remains largely speculative. If true, it would represent the ultimate tragic irony, a man so tormented by his own identity that he was willing to kill to protect a secret that, in a more enlightened world, would have been simply another aspect of his humanity.
Charging the defendant, Aaron Hernandez, with murder. What say you, Madam Foreperson? Is the defendant not guilty, guilty of murder in the first degree, or guilty of murder in the second degree?
Guilty of murder in the first degree.
On June 26, 2013, Aaron's carefully constructed world came crashing down. Hernandez was arrested, charged with first-degree murder and 5 gun-related charges, and released by the New England Patriots within 90 minutes. The speed with which the Patriots distanced themselves from their former star spoke volumes about what they may have suspected about his character all along. The transformation was immediate and stark. One day, Aaron Hernandez was a millionaire NFL star with a bright future. The next, he was inmate #174954 at Bristol County Jail, facing a potential life sentence. The fall from grace was so swift and complete that it seemed almost surreal, like watching a skyscraper collapse in real time. Even in jail, Aaron's violent tendencies continued to manifest. Hernandez faced 21 disciplinary offenses over 22 months, including possessing contraband and threatening guards. He was involved in an altercation with another inmate at Bristol County Jail, leading to charges of assault and battery. This wasn't a man who was remorseful or seeking redemption. This was someone who continued to view violence as an acceptable solution to his problems. The trial, revelation, and tragic end. The trial of Aaron Hernandez for the murder of Odin Lloyd became a spectacle that transcended sports, transforming into a national conversation about celebrity, justice, and the dark underbelly of professional athletics. What emerged was not just the story of a murder, but a complex portrait of a man whose brain had been irrevocably damaged by years of football-related trauma, whose psyche had been fractured by childhood abuse, and whose descent into violence seemed as inevitable as it was tragic. The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating in its accumulation of evidence. The trial began on January 29, 2015, in Fall River, Massachusetts, with prosecutors presenting 132 witnesses, including Patriots owner Robert Kraft and Cheyenne Jenkins. The sheer volume of evidence painted a picture of premeditation that was impossible to ignore. Prosecutors used video evidence, cell phone records, and testimony from Ortiz and Wallace to build their case, portraying Hernandez as orchestrating the murder. The most damning evidence came from Aaron's own home security system, a piece of technology that had been installed to protect him, but ultimately became the instrument of his destruction. Surveillance footage from Hernandez's home showed him holding what prosecutors argued was the .45 caliber handgun used in Lloyd's murder minutes before the crime. The irony was palpable. A man so paranoid about his enemies that he surrounded himself with cameras had inadvertently documented his own path to the electric chair.
It was the hardest decision I ever had to make.
It was?
Yes.
Absolutely. He was innocent until we proved him guilty. Yep. Right. And we took that very serious.
I mean, when this trial started, did you know who Aaron Hernandez was?
I didn't even know who he was. I've never watched football.
The jury's perspective provided crucial insight into how Aaron's celebrity status both helped and hindered his case. While some jurors were Patriots fans who knew of his athletic achievements, others were completely unfamiliar with his football career, allowing them to focus solely on the evidence presented. This balance was crucial in ensuring that the trial focused on facts rather than fame. Perhaps the most emotionally devastating testimony came from Cheyenne Jenkins, Aaron's fiancée and the mother of his child. Jenkins testified under immunity about removing a box from their home and disposing of it at Aaron's request. The jury's reaction to her testimony was telling.
Well, let's talk about her testimony. Did you believe that she had thrown out a box, weighed several pounds, she says it smelled like weed, and didn't actually look inside the box?
I don't recall. Nothing.
All we know is we've seen her on video removing that box and placing it in the trunk of her sister's car. What happened with it after that, we don't know, and she's the only one.
She says she doesn't remember what dumpster was put in. She says she didn't look in the box. Did you find her credible?
She was very
No.
no.
Yeah.
She was very forgetful.
Very forgetful. Yeah.
Your selective memory.
The defense, led by Michael Fee, faced an almost impossible task. They argued that the evidence was circumstantial, suggesting Hernandez was targeted due to his fame, and that Ortiz or Wallace could have been the shooter. But the mountain of evidence was simply too overwhelming to overcome with reasonable doubt. On April 15, 2015, the inevitable verdict came down like a thunderclap. Hernandez was found guilty of first-degree murder and 5 weapons charges, receiving a mandatory life sentence without parole. At just 25 years old, Aaron Hernandez would spend the rest of his life behind bars, his dreams of redemption and freedom extinguished forever. But the legal saga was far from over. In May 2014, while awaiting trial for Lloyd's murder, Hernandez was indicted for the 2012 drive-by shooting deaths of Daniel De Abreu and Safiro Furtado outside a Boston nightclub. This second trial would prove to be even more dramatic than the first, featuring allegations of gang violence, drug deals gone wrong, and the testimony of Alexander Bradley, the man Aaron had allegedly tried to kill. The second trial began in March 2017, with Aaron now bearing the weight of a murder conviction and a life sentence. Prosecutors alleged Hernandez shot the men after one spilled a drink on him, though the motive was disputed. The case relied heavily on Bradley's testimony, a man whose credibility was questionable at best, given his own criminal history and the immunity deal he had received. In a shocking turn of events, on April 14, 2017, Hernandez was acquitted of these murder charges, but convicted of illegal possession of a handgun. For a brief moment, it seemed as though Aaron might have found a glimmer of hope in an otherwise hopeless situation. His legal team celebrated the acquittal as vindication, and Aaron himself seemed buoyed by the rare victory.
One day we were walking in the cell, and he's like, just lay down and close your eyes, shut off the light, and he's like, you know, and that's the first time.
How much of a dark secret was this for him to carry around as a burden?
I could tell once he started opening up to me and talking to me every day, I could just see it in his eyes. Like, he was getting happier. He was just being able to confide in someone, something that he couldn't talk to anybody about.
But Aaron's moment of triumph would be tragically short-lived. On April 19, 2017, just 5 days after his acquittal, Aaron Hernandez was found dead in his cell at Sousa Baranowski Correctional Center, having hanged himself with a bedsheet. He was 27 years old, the same age at which many athletes are just reaching their prime, yet he had already lived a lifetime of violence, success, and ultimately despair. The circumstances surrounding Aaron's suicide were as complex and controversial as his life had been. In his final calls, Hernandez sounded upbeat, expressing optimism about appealing his Lloyd conviction. This apparent contradiction between his public demeanor and his private desperation has fueled conspiracy theories and raised questions about what truly drove him to take his own life.
You stood by Aaron every step of the way. You stood by him then. Do you still believe that your fiancé was innocent?
Yes, of course I do. I'd be a cold person to leave someone that had nobody at all.
What was in the documentary that shouldn't have been, in your opinion?
Yeah, I would have to say Aaron's sexuality. You can't describe someone's sexuality without them being here. Although I've had a child with Aaron, I still can't tell you how he was feeling inside. No one can.
Shayana Jenkins, who had stood by Aaron throughout his legal troubles, remained convinced of his innocence even after his death. Her unwavering loyalty, while admirable, also highlighted the complex web of denial and enabling that had surrounded Aaron throughout his life. The most shocking revelation came months after Aaron's death, when researchers at Boston University announced their findings from an examination of his brain. Aaron Hernandez was diagnosed with stage 3 chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, a degenerative brain disease linked to repeated head trauma, with damage comparable to that seen in much older individuals. Dr. Ann McKee described it as the most severe case seen in someone his age. This diagnosis reframed everything we thought we knew about Aaron Hernandez. CTE is associated with symptoms like poor judgment, impulsivity, aggression, paranoia, and memory loss, which aligned with Hernandez's behavior. Suddenly, the violent outbursts, the paranoia, the inability to control his impulses, all of it could be seen through the lens of a diseased brain that had been systematically destroyed by years of football-related trauma.
I know he expressed, how beat up his body was and the effects the game had on him, but in terms of identifying CTE, I know there's things in his life that, he struggled with understanding, but no one can say, right now that's one of the things they're trying to do is how can they find CTE in someone before they pass.
So, Aaron's autopsy revealed he had stage 3 CTE.
Yeah.
I put some pictures up here. It's the worst case ever seen in a young brain.
The CTE diagnosis raised profound questions about culpability and justice. If Aaron's brain had been so severely damaged that his capacity for rational decision-making was compromised, how do we reconcile this with the need to hold him accountable for his actions? Experts like Dr. Sam Gandy suggested that CTE likely had a profound effect on Hernandez's behavior, potentially explaining his criminal acts. Yet Dr. Bob Cantu noted that while impulsivity is a hallmark of CTE, Lloyd's murder appeared planned, complicating the causal link. The revelation of Aaron's struggle with his sexuality added another layer of tragedy to an already heartbreaking story.
Just when he's, again, he's like, Mom, you're gonna die never knowing your son. And my mom being my mom, started, mouthing with Aaron, and they started bickering back and forth, and then all of a sudden, they have this conversation and they're both flooded with tears across from each other, and hear the weight of what's on my brother is, being expressed, and for a mother to, be looking at it across from the scratched, glass and the Zell, and seeing your son who, you would have never anticipated him ever being in this situation.
The tragedy of Aaron's internal struggle becomes even more poignant when we consider Cheyana's response to learning about his sexuality after his death.
Do you want to comment at all on that aspect of this documentary and the rumors that had been there that Aaron may have been bisexual or gay?
If he did feel that way, or if he felt the urge, I wish that I was told. And I wish that he would have told me, because I would not have loved him any differently. I would have understood. It's not shameful, and I don't think anybody should feel shameful on who they are inside, regardless of who they love. I think it's a beautiful thing. I wish I was able to tell him that.
Her unconditional love and acceptance came too late, a devastating reminder of how toxic masculinity and homophobia can literally be matters of life and death. Perhaps one of the most chilling aspects of Aaron's final days was revealed through the testimony of his alleged prison lover, Kyle Kennedy.
He was just telling me that was my boy. It's like he wasn't loyal to me. He didn't, I couldn't trust him. The media just makes him look like a monster. He's this kid that had everything going for him. And he just, why did he do this?
Even more disturbing was Kennedy's claim that Aaron had confessed to additional murders.
Wearing prison scrubs and covered in tattoos, Kyle Kennedy dropped a bombshell about Aaron Hernandez.
We call him Double A, and we got two bodies, and I used to tell him, boy, we should call you Triple A. He's like, nah, he's like 4. We're sitting in somewhere, what you mean 4? And he's like, I got 4 bodies.
Did you believe him?
What we were able to establish is a credible lead that suggests that Aaron Hernandez could have been involved in a 4th murder. If Aaron Hernandez killed 4 people, he was a serial killer.
The legal aftermath of Aaron's death created yet another controversy. Due to Massachusetts' abatement ab initio doctrine, Hernandez's murder conviction was initially vacated on May 9, 2017, because he died during his appeal, rendering him legally innocent. This legal technicality meant that, in the eyes of the law, Aaron died an innocent man, a cruel irony that added insult to the injury felt by Odin Lloyd's family and friends. Fortunately, justice would eventually prevail. The Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court reinstated the conviction in March 2019, abolishing the abatement doctrine as outdated. This decision ensured that Aaron's conviction would stand as part of the historical record, providing some measure of closure for those seeking justice. This was just one of many untold stories. Click any of the suggested cards on your screen to explore more.